second one is to determine what are we really receiving, if you will, from the purchaser.
Is that down payment or something?
No, it's over the life of the, I swear all this is going to make sense in here in just a second, okay? Give me a moment. This 300,000, the reason we're calling it the contract price is because for the installment sale contract, we, as the owner of the property, are getting 300,000. Of that 300,000 that we are receiving over that, let's say, 30-year term, 200,000 of that is gross profit. Okay? Now, the difference between this example, and we're almost done with this example, and the one that we did over here was this one had no debt. Okay? This was a cash deal in the sense I fully own the property and I'm selling it or engaging in an installment sale contract with you, and so there's no debt involved. Okay? So there it's simpler, if you will. But whenever we have the debt involved now all of a sudden, the mortgage, we've got to subtract that out from the sale price, and so this is really, in terms of the amount that the owner would be getting, they would only be getting 300,000, and that would be spread over the 30 years. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Or however long the installment sale contract is. But
how does that work with the lender?
give me a moment. Okay. So one of the things that we need to calculate is to take that gross profit and divide it by the contract price, and when we do that, 200,000 divided by 300,000, we get 67%. Okay? Now, without me telling you what that number is called, what would you say that number should be called?
Profit ratio.
Yeah, profit ratio. Okay? Now you're saying, okay, why is that important? Okay, this gets back to this whole business of what my capital gain would be for each year. Okay, how much total income, okay, for this example, how much total income am I going to receive over the 30 years? Okay, one more time. How much total income am I going to receive over the 30 years for this deal, the second deal? 300,000. Okay? I'm not, I mean, obviously the mortgage is still in effect, so, or, okay? So you're not getting that money, okay? I am only getting the piece above and beyond the mortgage. So, if I'm getting $300,000 over 30 years.
And that's including principal and interest?
Yeah,
or some sort?
We're trying to keep it simple. Okay. All right. Just to illustrate the concept. Okay. Now, so this is simply saying $300,000 over that 30 years. So if you take 300,000 divided by 30 years, that's $10,000 a year. So 300,000 divided by 30 years would be $10,000 a year. But now, that's what we're receiving each year. But now, how much of that is subject to capital gains? Come on. Yes, 67%. Because the gross profit was 200,000 over the 300,000. So, in other words, 67% of the total income each year, or basically $6,700, is going to be basically your gain, your capital gain, if you will, per year that would then be taxed. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Okay, you see how it all begins to come together, okay?
Why 67% for the tax? Was that
Because of the profit ratio.
Right. And that adjustable basis is what the county or the municipality thinks
No.
your property worth?
No, your adjusted basis is what the property is technically worth, in a sense, for internal revenue code purposes, or in essence, what you paid for the property.
The adjusted basis includes the interest and depreciation.
Correct.
That's it, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah. That's why it's higher.
Okay.
Because then the actual.
All right. Any questions?
You're getting $6,700.
$6,700 is technically the capital gain piece that you would be taxed on. In other words, you would not be taxed on the remaining whatever 3,300 or whatever it is.
3,300 is what now?
Would just be, that's just simply reversion of income. There's no tax on that.
So this is the
Because you're reclaiming money that you already had invested.
so this is the money that you will be taxed on, right?
I'm sorry?
The tax will be on the 6.
The tax, the capital gain piece of the tax would be on the 6,700, yes. Okay? All right. Okay. And let's see. We've got two more little concepts and then we're done with this. Okay. Okay. To the final topics. Tax deferred exchanges. One of, and this is also, this is stuff, my suspicion is, if you haven't already, you will be covering this in the accounting class. Okay? So you get a double whammy on this one. A 1031 tax deferred exchange. It is not a tax, not tax free. Okay? People refer to it as a tax-free exchange incorrectly because it is not, you don't escape the tax forever. It gets deferred. Okay? There's a difference. A tax-free means you never have to pay it, ever, ever, ever. Okay? Tax deferred means you're kicking it down the road and have to pay it at some point in the future. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, same thing is true, just to kind of put things into parallel universes here. Any of you that have retirement plans, what are you able to do? Put the money that you put into that retirement plan, as a general rule, you're able to put that money in on a pre-tax basis. In other words, you don't get taxed on it that year. And that money sits there, accumulates over the next, whatever, 10, 15, 20, 30, whatever many years until you reach retirement age. And then all of a sudden you start taking money out. Well, as you're taking that money out, what are you going to have to do? Start paying taxes on it. Does that make sense? Okay? This, to a certain extent, is somewhat similar. Now, okay, no, you're going to ask a complicated question or an easy one?
Pretty easy, but might not.
Okay.
So, one of the guys I was dealing with said that 1031s, you can avoid taxes upon debt if you put it into a CRT. Is that, so
You mean a single purpose entity?
No, a charitable
Oh,
remainder trust.
okay, all right.
So, and then your heirs can use it for tax-free.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Okay? That gets beyond the scope of what we want to do. Okay. So, a tax deferred 1031, okay, first of all, where does the 1031 come from? Just so that everybody, because you see this, and the first thing that, everybody just wonders, why this 1031? It is simply a section of the Internal Revenue Code. Okay? So if you actually type in section 1031 Internal Revenue Code, all of this stuff pops up. Okay? Now, what is it meant to be used for? Exchanges. Okay, is the key operative word. Meaning, real estate for real estate. Income producing real estate for other income producing real estate. Not personal residence real estate. Whole different tax regime, okay? Personal residences, you get all sorts of other tax benefits from, and so remove those from the equation. All we're talking about here is income producing real estate for income producing real estate. Now, what the IRS basically allows is for you to buy a property. Property A. You buy this property and you pay $1 million for it. Subsequent to that purchase, you own it for 5 years, let's say. All right? 5 years later, you decide to sell it. Okay? You sell, sell A for $1.5 million. 5 years later. Now, ordinarily, what would happen if you did that is that you would have to pay capital gains tax on $500,000. Okay, everybody with me on that? Okay. To avoid having to pay that to pay the capital gains on that $500,000, you can engage in a tax deferred 1031 exchange. Meaning, you find another property that you want to buy. Okay? And so property B is available, and to keep it simple, you buy property B for $1.5 million. So you can take all of the proceeds from A, roll them into B, have a new depreciation that starts, and not have to pay any capital gains on this transaction. Does that make sense? Yes or no? But, as you can imagine, there are tons of little issues that the IRS throws at you to make this a complicated process, okay? And they have very specific, very detailed, very unforgiving rules that apply to this. And I will say this on camera, as much as I love him, San Miguel is very much of the mindset of this kind of approach to things, in the sense, how is he about deadlines? Rigid. If it is not in at 5 p.m., it doesn't count. If you don't complete a quiz at the time that it needs to be completed, it's out. That mindset is very much the same mindset that the IRS employs. It's an accounting mindset. No, it is. And it's a very rigid, rule-based approach to how things operate. And there is no leniency on this, okay? But whenever they say you must identify a property within a certain number of days, you have to do it within that time frame. If you do it one day after, transaction invalid, pay capital gains. Okay? If you don't find a property within the specified time period, transaction invalid, pay the capital gains. If you don't structure this through a title company to where the money never touches your hands, you're going to pay the capital gains. In other words, make it where you cannot receive, in other words, here's the point. The IRS says, while we will allow this exchange to happen, there are many conditions, and one of those is the money from the sale never, ever hits your bank account. Ever. In no way, shape, form, or fashion. So what has to happen is all the money from this sale goes into, effectively, the title company. The title company takes possession of that money. Then whenever it is time to transact the actual sale or acquisition of property B, the title company takes those proceeds and takes care of closing out the transaction. So it is a quote-unquote seamless exchange. Okay? If you take any of that money out, you're going to pay capital gains. Okay? So the point is, the IRS is not creating these sorts of things to inherently make it easy on you. That's not the point. They have simply set up, here are the rules. You follow the rules, you get the benefit. If you don't follow the rules, you don't get the benefit. Pure and simple. Okay?
Do that apply to any the years, like 5, 10,
Yep.
doesn't matter?
Yep.
Does escrow,
Now, but, okay, one more. Go
does
ahead.
the attorney's escrow have to pay you, I believe in Florida, right? They have to pay you on the interest for the 180 days?
And then you would be subject to potentially tax on that.
Okay, but you do collect interest while your money's sitting in escrow?
Not necessarily. In some cases, you might have to forego that.
Okay.
But that gets beyond the scope of our discussion. Okay, now, the part that matters here, beyond what I just described, is, okay, can we do this again? Yes. We can do this, in essence, an infinite number of times. You know, it's a pain to do, but we can do it to do what? Keep, in essence, escalating our property portfolio and getting rid of properties that we no longer have interest or value in. Does that make sense? Now, part of the complication that comes up is, what if this property is not 1.5 million? What if it's less? What if it's more? Then what has to happen is you will probably end up having to pay capital gains on part of it. Like, for example, if it only happened to be a $1 million property, well, you're going to end up having to pay the full capital gains on the $500,000 anyway, so it would be worth going through the brain damage. But now, if it's worth more than the $1.5 million, then you're going to get the full benefit of that, and then you would take on, let's say, a mortgage or infuse more cash, but you've cut off the necessity to pay the $500,000 of capital gains. Okay, does that make sense? Now, the thing is,
If it was less, then why wasn't they just let you take the hit for the loss?
no, that's what I'm saying, you would.
Right.
You would probably just take the hit. I mean, if it was like, in other words, if the new property was only $1 million, there'd be no benefit to doing the capital gain, or during the exchange. Okay, but like let's say that we get into property C, and property C is $2 million.
You can keep going.
You can just keep going and just keep deferring that gain infinitum, you know, for many years down the road.
What do you do when you have done it for so many years with so many properties and then you die, or?
When you die, then it's all a matter of how your estate is going to distribute. How your estate is going to distribute it and to distribute it. And in that case, then you're finally going to have to pay, or your estate is going to have to pay the taxes on that. Okay. Now, once again, I am not, you know, once again, the tax professional. That's, you know, San Miguel, he is a certified public accountant. That is his thing, and he can get into the intricate nitty-gritty of the intricacies of this, and he will if you ask him. But the point that I'm trying to illustrate is just simply, okay, conceptually, what happens if you buy a property and you want to trade it for another property, what in essence happens, okay? Yep.
Couple questions. It doesn't have to be equal lifetime. It can be just as long as the value is comparable, right?
Yeah, like kind is, it's an interesting word because technically like-kind in this context really means it's an income-producing property for another income-producing property.
Okay, so as long as it is
Right.
property, that's fine. What about the costs associated with that transaction? Do I have to pay out of pocket, or does that come out of the?
It can come out of that.
It can come out of the procedure?
Yeah. Yeah, so some of those things, yeah, you can roll in, but once again, that's getting into the weeds, okay, for our purposes.
Why
Yep.
did no one mention a reference to charity?
Okay.
That's
Nonprofits can own real estate, and there are other tax benefits of nonprofits owning real estate, one of which is they don't even pay property taxes. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that. But like churches, they don't pay property taxes. People don't realize that. You know, people say, well, you got all these churches, you know, all over town. You're saying none of them pay property taxes? Yeah, none of them pay property taxes.
No.
They can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not they can, you know, in some cases. They have the money. You know, that's not an issue necessarily. But the point is, technically, they're a not-for-profit, and that they will not pay property taxes. You know, another thing, like the university is another example. It is a not-for-profit entity. It doesn't pay property taxes to anybody. So, you know, in terms of the city of Davie and you know, that sort of thing, they get nothing out of this. Okay, other than, you know, obviously, you know, other peripheral benefits of you get some housing that gets built around the campus, you get, you know, sales taxes that get generated from, you know, peripheral businesses and so forth, so on. But for the most part, it's a self-contained, you know, non-taxable entity. So, you know, as it relates to income taxes, same sort of thing, that whenever not for-profit entities engage in the sale of real estate, they don't inherently pay capital gains tax, they don't inherently pay, you know, any of those sorts of fees and charges, nor do they incur the capital, you know, sort of gains tax. Like, so for example, if a church decides, okay, we're going to sell off our building to either buy a new building or to shut down operations, then usually under those circumstances, well, they're not going to inherently pay taxes on that, but they're also going to be required to basically funnel that money into another not-for-profit, you know, because they're not going to be able to take the proceeds home themselves.
What about,
And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this, but
Yeah.
okay, one more question.
Then you pay salaries, you can pay bonuses.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Other questions before we move on? We got one more topic. We good with this?
At some point, you're gonna have to sell the property or get rid of it. At that
Well,
point,
in one sense, at the time of death, yes.
But, I mean, if I'm sick of flexible.
Yeah, no, if you're sick of ownership, then yes, you'd have to sell it, and then potentially you're gonna incur all of those accumulated capital
You
gains.
sell it on a year, you have losses.
Well, and that's another thing, okay,
That's good.
that, you know, in the event that you've got a situation of where you've incurred a vast amount of losses on real estate, then you could potentially sell the asset at that time and then sort of break even, in one sense. I mean, actually, Jose sent me a question about, you know, dealing with passive activity losses with real estate professionals, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this, but many years ago, once again, I'm saying many years ago, we're talking about like the 1980s, there was a very pervasive culture of non-real estate people, like specifically medical doctors, attorneys, high net worth individuals that were investing directly into real estate for one singular purpose, as a tax shelter. What does that mean, a tax shelter? Well, that means that they could shield other income that they had from other parts of their lives with these operating losses on the real estate. And you're saying, well, why would you want to ever incur losses? I mean, that seems kind of stupid. Well, the property itself may be losing money in the sense that it's not generating enough income to really justify its existence, but it might be making just enough money, or you're able to use other money to create our first topic, first day, equity buildup. So even though the property may be losing money, you may be gaining equity in the property. So there's some potentially benefits within that tax shelter that you're actually gaining ownership of the property even though it's losing money. Okay, but at some point you're going to sell it and make money off of that. But the point is, without, once again, getting too deep into the weeds on it, in 1986, they changed the tax law to basically try to eliminate virtually all these sort of passive losses on real estate. And they realized, you know, there are an awful lot of people that are engaged on a day-to-day basis in real estate activity. So in 1993, they came along and they changed the law again to basically loosen up some of those restrictions on the passive losses so that people who are actively engaged in the ownership, management, sale, whatever of real estate, dedicated real estate professionals as determined by the number of hours they dedicate to it over the course of the year, they get to claim passive losses on real estate assets up to a certain point that the average ordinary, let's say medical doctor or attorney, might not be able to. Okay, this is a sidebar because of your question. Does that help answer? Yeah. Okay. Final topic for today. Okay.
Final topic. And then it's
Little test, yeah. Okay.
Do you have this one here now?
What?
This?
What do you
I
mean?
want to get this out.
No. I'll create it sometime between now and next Saturday. Okay. Incremental cost of refinancing. And we're initially going to do it on a before tax basis and then on an after tax basis. Before tax, incremental cost of refinancing. Yes, this is in the book. All right. One of the things that you may want to do as an owner of a property, whenever you're sort of thinking about this whole thing of renovating, okay, is you may want to say, all right, where am I going to get the money to renovate the property? You know, am I just going to come out of my back pocket for that money to renovate? Or can I potentially refinance the property, pull out, in essence, money from that refinancing to be able to use for the renovations? Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no? So in other words, using a simple house example, now houses are different because they're personal residences, but basically be like, okay, you've got a $200,000 house, that you bought it for, let's say a $200,000 mortgage to keep things simple, but now the property is worth, let's say, $300,000, and so you go to your lender and you say, all right, I want to get a $300,000 mortgage on my house, so you can in essence pull out $100,000, use that money to basically do renovations or whatever else you might want to do on that property. Does that make sense? Now on the home side, that'd be kind of like a home equity loan sort of thing. Okay, and that's very similar to what we'd be talking about on a commercial property. But sometimes with like the home equity loans, there's no real restriction as to how you spend that money. You know, you potentially could use that money for a whole number of other purposes than just your home itself.
That's
Okay.
the
Thus the problems that we end up having. But with commercial property, not so much the case. Usually there, you're going to pull that money out and you're going to, in a lot of cases, be confined in some cases by your lender. Once again, the lender is going to kind of make this determination, but they're going to say, okay, we're going to allow you to do this with the intent that you're going to put all this money into the property in terms of renovations and improving it in some way, shape, or fashion. Make sense? Yes or no? Monica, you got a puzzled look on your face, so.
You can't just pull a line of equity off your commercial.
Well,
property,
no,
just realize it's
okay,
a refund.
you can just pull a line of credit, that's different.
Off your equity, okay.
A line of credit is not a full refinancing of the property, okay? A refinancing implies you're gonna have to go through, you're gonna have to get a reappraisal of the property, you're gonna have to literally go through a whole new closing with the loan, okay? Yeah, big pain, but could be worth it in the event of, you know, what you're able to achieve. Okay, so, all right, so let's just say we've got a little problem. We've got a new loan and an existing loan. All right, and we're going to have the current balance. We're going to have the monthly payment. And we're going to have the balance at end of year 5, okay? And so, once again, there's an exact example of this in the book, but I'm giving you another one just so that you can go through the calculations yourself. So in this case, we've got a new loan of $200,000. Our existing loan that we're replacing had a balance of $150,000. Our monthly payment goes from $1,500 to $2,000. And then our balance at the end of year 5, in this particular case, is going to be $175,000 and $125,000. Okay? Now all of that's going to be given to you. And the difference between the two is going to be given to you. So you don't have to do the simple math. So a difference of $50,000, difference of $500, and difference of $50,000. Okay? So, once again, make sure that we're clear on what is happening here. You have a property. The existing loan on the property that you currently have is $150,000. You're going to take and you're going to replace that loan with this new loan for $200,000. So you're getting an extra $50,000 of basically working capital that you can use. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay? So, once again, these are the numbers corresponding to each loan. Now, you don't have to do this, but we're going to do this. And that is, I want you to find out what the effective interest rate is on the new loan and the old loan. Okay? So what do you think you're going to do? Present value, payment, future value, solve for the interest rate. Term is 5 years. Okay? Pretty simple.
You're gonna do it for the same for both, or just?
You're going to do them separately. Okay, once again, and this is monthly, so once again, make sure your calculators are set to 12 payments per year if you're not getting the right answer. You're going to put the current balance in as a positive, you're going to put the payment in as a negative, and then the future value in as a negative. Once again, present value, payment, future value. And term is 5 years.
Which one goes as a negative?
The payment and future value.
Payment and future value.
18%, I mean, it's 12 payments, right?
12 payments per year.
80%.
No, 10.06. Okay, so while you're still messing with that, let me just go ahead and point out what we've got here. Okay, okay, just, okay, hang with me here for a second. I'm gonna try to pull this out real quick. Okay, on the surface, what is happening? We're paying a higher interest rate, yes? No question about it. We're paying a higher interest rate to get this new loan. So I agree with that.
Correct.
Okay. Now, but what kind of matters more than just we're paying a higher interest rate on the new loan is what is our incremental cost of the refinancing? In other words, how much more are we really having to pay? Well, you're saying, well, wait a second, well, okay, this one is 10.06, this one's 9.37, so we subtract one from the other, and that's how much, no. Keep in mind what's actually taking place here. How much more are you borrowing? How much more are you having to pay back? 50,000. How much more are we having to have as a payment? $500. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to put each of these in, just like you did the ones above. Present value is a positive, payment as a negative, future value as a negative, and what you should end up with is 12%. So what that's saying is as follows. Another way of looking at this. Okay. Your existing loan has a 9.37% interest rate. Yes? The incremental $50,000 that we are borrowing has a 12% cost or 12% interest rate. The combined incremental and existing gives us the 10.06. Does that make sense? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're saying, okay, big deal. Who cares? Why is this important? It's 12%. Let's think about this for a second. Could we not go out before we get the new loan? Could we not, after having done this analysis, before we get the new loan, go out and potentially find another third-party lender to lend us just $50,000 and possibly do what Monica is suggesting, just get a line of credit for $50,000 and possibly be able to get that line of credit at an interest rate at something less than 12%. You follow? And that would make sense for us to do that. The issue here is as follows. If I simply told you, before we did all this analysis, that I would give you a loan for $50,000 at an 11% interest rate, and you were to go and look at getting a $200,000 loan at 10.06, you'd say, why would I want to pay you 11%? I can get 10.06 for a $200,000 loan. Yes? Would that not be the logic? But what you're failing to recognize is this $50,000 that I'm offering up to you potentially at 11% is actually cheaper than you would be really paying on an incremental basis on that new loan for the full 200. And that's where people constantly get taken advantage of, is not realizing that. Okay? It's like getting a second mortgage on your home. A lot of times whenever you get a second mortgage on your home up front, they'll try to blend in some cases, the interest rate. That, like your base rate might be, let's say, 5% for maybe the first 80% or something like that of the mortgage loan, and then they'll say, oh, we'll give you an additional 15 or 20%, as a second mortgage, and they may not, in some cases, fully make it, even though they have to disclose it, but it doesn't make, they don't make a big deal out of it. Oh, and that's going to be at 18% or something ridiculous. Okay, but then blended together doesn't look so bad. You've been better off, in some cases, is going out, putting that second mortgage on a credit card. Okay, make sense? Okay, now, the final piece of this, and then we're done with this, is to calculate the after-tax cost of the incremental cost of borrowing. All right? And there, all you're going to do, very simply put, is you're going to take the 12%, multiply it by 1 minus the tax rate. Okay, so you're basically taking the before tax cost of 12%, multiplying it by 1 minus the tax rate to give us our after tax cost. All right? If our tax rate, let's just say I'm giving you a tax rate of 28%, then what you would be doing, 1 minus 0.28 is what? 72, right? Yes?
Yes.
What is
In other words, 72 plus 28 is 100, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So what you've got is 0.12 times 0.72, which is the impact of the tax. So your after-tax cost is going to be 0.086 or 8.6%. So your after-tax cost of refinancing is only 8.6%. Because all that's doing is just transforming it and saying, all right, the before tax cost of refinancing was 12%. Now, because of our 28% tax rate, it shortcuts the process to allow us to calculate an after-tax cost of refinancing. Okay? All right? Okay, we've got about 5 minutes, so we'll take a quick break and then come back, and then we will do test number 1. And, yep.
That's the question. Do you have the book handy by chance?
Yep.
There's an exhibit there that shows before tax flow on a problem. Before tax flow, less tax, the tax is higher than the before tax flow, and then when one is added to the other, it comes up with a positive number. What is that? After tax cash.
You have a loss.
When you have a loss,
Then you can carry forward that loss into a future year.
okay, so it's kept as a positive.
Yep. Okay, all right, so once again,
What's your income, including,
sorry,
incremental?
incremental. Your incremental cost of refinancing,
What is the BT?
before tax.
0.12?
Yeah, your before tax cost of refinancing. Yep,
Why would there be a tax on borrowing? Financing?
because you get a tax benefit from borrowing because you get an interest deduction. Oakley dokley. Pass these out. And I'm just passing out your answer sheet. Okay, put up all your books, papers, all that stuff. All you can use, obviously, on this is just your calculator and your pencil. So no notes, no computers, other than your calculator. So make sure you write your name. You're not going to take it? Okay. Okay.